Hey guys, we're out here at Langdon Tactical Technologies today in Arizona. I'm going to show you a little bit of behind the scenes stuff. We're going to talk with Ernest, with AIMEE. We're going to talk with the guys that work here that assemble these guns, that handle customer service calls, that get them packed up and shipped out to you. We're going to talk a little bit about research and development stuff. We're going to talk about how to lube these things, how to keep these guns up and running and make them last for years and years. Let's do it.
What's a different pin? What pin is that?
Cool. We're at Langdon Tactical Technologies today. Oh, hey guys.
Hi, Mickey.
What's up, Mickey?
What are you guys up to today in here?
We are, right now, we're trying to figure out what parts, spare parts we need to order.
On top of MP3 guns.
And Jonah is putting together MP3 guns.
What's an MP3 gun? That means that's one of your guns with all the internals coated.
All the metal parts except for the frame, slide, and barrel are coated in nickel Teflon MP3.
Is it worth it?
It is totally worth it. It's so nice. It is so nice.
And it only gets better with time.
Yep.
Does it? It wears into a better...
Oh, yeah.
You're okay. I could have got a shot of you doing packaging.
Jonah's finishing up an MP3 gun now, so you'll get to try it. But
Oh, cool. Jonah is one of your gunsmiths here, right?
Jonah is the gunsmith.
The
really.
gunsmith.
He does. We have some armorers, but he's the gunsmith. At this point, Jonah's probably worked on more 92s than I have.
You were saying that when I last saw you.
Yeah, he's probably, I forget. We've tried to calculate the numbers, but they keep moving. But yeah, thousands of trigger jobs.
Thousands of trigger jabs?
Yeah, probably somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000, I think. More than that, you think, babe?
What goes into a good trigger job? So these 92s that you guys are working on right now, Beretta knows what they're doing. They've been building them for years. What makes it better? I know you've answered this question a million times.
There's several things. Obviously, we're polishing the contact points that make the trigger smoother. We're also using a really high quality trigger bar. The factory trigger bar in the Berettas is a cast material, and they do that because they're trying to keep the cost of the actual gun lower. If you end up putting too much money into each and every component, you end up with a gun that's not affordable. So the trigger bar that they use is more than adequate, but when you're trying to have a really smooth, consistent, non-stacking trigger pull, that machined trigger bar is critical, and the finish that's on the trigger bar is critical. So we're using a nickel Teflon finish for the silver ones, and we are using a what is a DLC coating called from a company called Plasma Tech that puts an extremely hard, like 1600 Vickers hard coating on it. So those are the two that we use.
What does that hard coating mean to the end user?
Well, it means that A, it's going to last, and B, it's going to be slick. So it's going to give you a really nice trigger pull for a long period of time.
I get questions all the time. Doing a trigger job's not safe. You're going to make the gun unsafe. If the manufacturer intended it to work that way, why wouldn't they just make it work that way? What about that?
Well, we're doing a lot of handwork that they can't afford to do. That's one of the parts. We're using lighter springs in the DA, and what we find is specifically with the European manufacturers, the hammer spring weights that they choose are specific to two things, okay? One is they want to have reliability in very horrible environments. I mean, if you're going to do an across the beach raid and you're going to get dirt and grime and everything inside the mechanism of the gun that could cause a problem, the heavier hammer spring is one of the reasons that they put that in there. The other reason they use a really heavy hammer spring is, especially in Europe, a lot of the material or a lot of the primers that they use over there are basically rifle primers. So they need a lot of firing pin energy in order to get those primers to pop. And so we don't necessarily need that for a gun that A, we're going to take care of, and B, that we're going to shoot, you know, U.S. manufactured ammunition in that's not going to have that problem.
What would you say is the biggest problem people have when trying to do like your trigger parts in a bag? And what's the correct term on your website?
Trigger job in a bag.
Trigger job in a bag. Yes, thank you. Pardon me. So folks can buy one of your guns without the trigger job.
Correct.
And later down the road purchase a bag of springs and parts. I'm being a smart ass. But what's the hard spots that somebody may have doing that, making that come out with a good result?
I would say there would be two things. One is the actual installation process, making sure they put the parts back in the gun correctly. The trigger return spring can be just a little bit tricky. It's not difficult, but it can be a little tricky. And then we've had people put the sear spring in backwards, where it's not actually putting tension on the sear. And we'll see hammer follow to the half cock notch. Not double, typically it doesn't double, but it falls to the half cock notch is what we see there, because there's no tension on the sear. So if they install it improperly, we'll have issues with that. The other thing that we see is in a percentage of the guns, and it seems to vary. Joan, I don't know what you would say, but we'll have, you know, we'll do 100 trigger jobs, and we may have 5 in a row that we need to fit the trigger bar to, and then we'll do 20 or 30 and never have to do anything. It just depends on how the tolerances stack up. But we do, because we are trying to optimize the performance of the gun, we're taking out over travel, we're reducing reset. Specifically the over travel, we'll see certain guns that need just a little bit more over travel, or they need the hammer to release a little bit sooner in double action is what we see. There's maybe some fitting that needs to happen, and that would be the number one hindrance that I see, or the problem that people run into. So,
if somebody has one of your guns or another Beretta and they buy one of those kits and they realize they need fitting, what's the best thing they should do?
We'll watch the video or call us and we'll send them information on how to fit it properly.
Okay. And of course they always have the option of shipping to you and having
Correct.
you guys do it here in house, like what we're watching go on now.
Or just buy the gun with the trigger job already.
That's what I always tell folks. People will say to me, like, I'm going to buy it, and I know sometimes it's a finance issue if they don't have the capital on hand, but I tell dudes, just wait a couple more months, save the bucks, and just get it done.
Absolutely, yeah. The advantage of getting one that has a trigger job done in it from us is we've already gone through the gun. And if we see issues that maybe got missed during manufacturing or during assembly, we're going to go ahead and address those issues and fix them to the best of our ability. The big advantage one of the big advantages we see with the MP3 guns is we completely disassemble the gun. We're taking every single part out of the gun, and then we're reassembling it and checking everything as we go. With a ton of experience in doing that, and so we set up what ends up being a really high quality gun that's been checked. There's a couple of things that we do that are probably different than Beretta does in manufacturing, but things that we've learned along the ways by building, you know, custom versions of the gun, if you will, not necessarily production versions of the gun. So the carry bevel guns and the MP3 guns, I feel like you're just getting a consistently much higher quality product than you're going to get from an off-the-shelf gun. And don't get me wrong, I love 92s. 92s are great guns as they come, but we're trying to take that performance to the next level. And if that's what you're looking for as a higher performing product, that's what we're delivering to people.
I always liken it to, like, folks will say if that's how they wanted it, that's how they would have made it, then don't go buy a Ford truck and put like you made some modifications to your truck. You made the bed the way you want it. You put the racks in it and get it so it suits you and your purposes.
Correct. Yeah. No, I think that's 100% the difference. And we kind of like to think of it as any other product on the market, we don't see people saying that. I mean, with the AR-15 market, for example, you're not seeing people say, hey, don't put an optic on your gun. If the manufacturer wanted you to have a red dot on there, he would put it on there from the factory.
Right.
And, you know, that's just not the case anymore. As long as the gun is safe, I think you're going to be fine. And we've got thousands and thousands and thousands of guns that we've done trigger jobs on now. We're not going crazy with them. Could we make the single actions lighter? We could make the single action lighter, but it doesn't make sense to try to make it that light. It's plenty shootable as it is. We want it to be consistent. We want it to be crisp. And the double action specifically, what we're trying to do is make it a smoother, lighter double action to take away that hindrance of people, I can't pull that heavy, long trigger pull. Well, yeah, you can pull ours, almost guaranteed.
What, and you may have touched on this, what constitutes an unsafe trigger modification?
Well, I guess it depends on how you would want to qualify that. What I would say is unsafe is if the gun is not functioning correctly, meaning the hammer's falling early, or you're getting typically referred to as hammer follow, that would be unsafe. What I see is mostly in kind of striker fired guns, because we're not dramatically altering the way the gun functions. The firing pin block still works correctly. The half cock notch is still there. The pre-travel in the trigger that causes the firing pin block to work correctly, all of that is still there. All we're really doing is smoothing everything out so that the trigger pull is light and or lighter, and that the trigger is consistent, meaning it feels the same way every time you shoot it. What I would say unsafe is typically what we see in the 1911 world, is where that came from, where we have guns that will actually shoot more than one round at a time, right? You go to shoot your 1911 and it shoots a burst. And having shot years of IPSC and IDPA, I've seen that in matches many times. Guy goes to the string of fire and he swings the gun over to a target and he pulls the trigger and he goes, brrr, and there goes three or four rounds in, because whoa.
Yeah, whoa. What do you have to add to that as a trained gunsmith?
For being honest, I wasn't listening to him talk.
I know you're working, and that's a good thing. You're doing what the boss told you to do, your job.
I'm getting stuff out is what I'm doing.
Yeah, you are. Somebody's ability or lack of ability, like when should you not
When should you not do the work?
or start grinding on things? Guys, somebody just talked to me the other day talking about, I bought this part, but now I'm going to polish it, not knowing that they can wear through materials and cause issues.
Just let a gunsmith do it. Just, A, you're going to have the insurance behind you for a gunsmith doing it. B, you're going to have the safety. If that gunsmith can't do it correctly, you need to go to someone else who can.
So, I dig that, but then, what about, I'm going to put an intake on my truck? Does it have to be a Ford Master Tech?
If you're
there's some pretty savvy dudes, like my friend Les Keys Martoni. He's not a gunsmith, but one of these Berettas, he's... one of these... guns, he's tore them apart a million times, he knows kind of.
Well, that's how I got started.
That's how Ernest got started.
Yeah, there was no gunsmiths that were doing work on Berettas when I got started. So there was nowhere to send my gun when I started shooting Berettas in competition. I had to figure that on my own. But I got the advice and the expertise from, I was fortunate enough that I was working at Beretta at the time. So I had gunsmiths access to them to go talk to them. I had guys that had been engineers that could help me with kind of things. And one of the things that we're not doing on our trigger work is we're not, for example, reducing what typically guys do on 1911s. They'll actually shorten the hammer hooks so that they've got a really light, crisp trigger pull. We're not shortening hammer hooks. We're not reducing sear engagement. We're making it lighter, but it's still functioning correctly when we're doing that. The example I give on unsafe trigger work a lot of times is what I see in striker fired guns. Because now we want, the pejorative we want to make those striker fired guns like 1911s. You know, I want my Glock or my SIG 320 to feel just like a 1911 trigger. And now we're talking about a gun that is with a fully tensioned striker on it, or we've changed the way the gun operates. We see this a lot in the Glock world, where we'll take all the pre-travel out through series of over-travel or pre-travel set screws, so that now the firing pin block is actually already depressed on the trigger before you even put your finger on it. So now we have what is an unsafe gun, because if it gets dropped, it's not going to function properly. The safeties aren't going to work. And I see this all the time. We're going down the path of making their striker fired trigger better to the extent that it's like a 1911. And it doesn't make any sense to me, because if I were to launch the new 1911, and I've said this hundreds of times, with no safety, no grip safety, no thumb safety on it, but it's got the best trigger ever, everybody would say I was crazy, because you can see that the hammer's cocked. But if you look at a fully tensioned striker gun with trigger work done to it, basically you're walking around with a cocked hammer anyway. You just can't see that it's cocked. And that is when we get in a situation where anything touches that trigger, now we're going to have a potential unsafe situation.
Who's your favorite boss?
AIMEE.
Smart man.
She buys us food.
Well, these are 10 round compact mags. These are the factory 10 round mags that we've MP3'd. Some people live in states where, they can't, 10 rounds is all they can have. So if someone's ordering a gun from us from one of those states, they're going to get shipped the 10 round magazines.
But that customer opted to get MP3 coated mags.
That's
so
correct.
They're just getting the setup.
They're probably getting what we would consider an MP3 gun, meaning it's got all the metal parts except for the slide, the frame, and the barrel, and of course any springs that are in the gun are MP3 coated. And Jonah's just almost done with one he's putting together.
Oh man, you did that just in the time that we've been talking, huh?
Don't take me too long anymore.
You might have done it once or twice now.
Some of this might be proprietary that you don't want to talk to people about, but I can see you've got a pile of parts and you pull from those piles as you're assembling. How often do you need to do some filing or grinding or smacking or buffing on the components to get them to your level of satisfaction? Because if I sat here and assembled stuff, even though I shoot these guns, I'm not going to feel the same things that you feel.
Case by case. Honestly, not too often with this MP3 finish. The MP3 finish really does smooth it out that much to make it that much easier.
Okay.
But when we're working on these guns, or we're working on these parts, we've done thousands of them, and the term I like to use is it's a recipe. It's like I'm gonna bake a cake that you're gonna buy in the store, and you bought this cake, hundreds of times. It's gonna taste the same. It's the same thing with us. We know exactly what's going to be stoned, what's going to be polished, where things are going to be polishing. We're not guessing our way through it. If I remember correctly, I went through and counted all the different steps. It's 43 different steps that we're applying to the different parts in the gun, and then we assemble them, and then Jonah goes through, or we go through a series of checks on the trigger pull to make sure that there is sufficient over travel, that things are functioning correctly. He's going to check and make sure that all the magazines are fitting and dropping free, and then the gun is built. Oh, he's getting a bunch of mags, isn't he?
This guy knows what's up. You're like the stork.
Yeah.
Delivering somebody's new baby. Oh my. Oh my, are you serious? Well, ain't that a pretty little peach? And let me tell you, that is buttery sickness. Ugh. Oh my.
Technically my role is I'm the shipping manager and an armor. So
Okay.
I also work on guns. A lot of the work that I do on guns though is
What's your name? Go back.
Todd.
Todd.
Todd Kearney. I try to take a lot of work off of Jonah's plate. Like, I try to grind springs, get all that done. So stuff that he doesn't have to do a lot of the polishing for my parts, like all the trigger job and the bag parts, all get polished. Somebody's got to do it.
So if I call up here and I've got some questions and
you might get me on the phone.
Might get you on the phone.
Yep.
You're probably the guy getting it in the package, making sure that what I ordered is correct.
Like this customer's ordering an MP3 package.
Okay.
So we have these built out, so all I need is like the hammer spring, and the takedown lever and a guide rod, because depending on whether you order a full size or a compact, different guide rod, stuff like that.
Okay.
And then all I got to do now is drop those parts in this bag and throw it in the mail, so you'll have it in a few days.
How do you like working here?
I tell you what, I came from retail sales. When I first moved out here, I worked for a guy, did some custom stuff, did some painting. I much prefer to be building guns, but it's still fun. It's a great environment.
I'm listening to you, but these guys are trying to take the show.
As usual, the dogs try to steal the show. But like, it's a great environment. They're really good to work for. So I can't complain. They take care of me. And that's all I ask. And it's much better than retail sales. Anybody who's worked retail gun sales will tell you they probably want out.
Yeah, I've heard that one a few times.
Get me out of here.
Right.
The business and customer service aspect of it is fantastic. Because of their backgrounds and having dealt with customers, they took what they liked and brought it into this business, and what they didn't like, they got rid of it. So from that aspect, from them, it's actually easier than dealing with some other places that I've worked. And we build damn good stuff. Like I'm not an SADA guy at all. Not really. I knew nothing about the PX4 when I started here. Other than, oh look, it's a gun. That's all I really knew. I have learned a lot more, and I have a much bigger appreciation now for the SADA. I mean, I shot Ernest's class and I ran in the clock because I shoot carry optic and I shoot a lot of steel, and that's what I was used to. So I didn't want to change that into a class and then show up looking like a fool.
Sure. Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, I'm going to show up this class and get schooled. So
I shoot clocks too.
Yeah, I mean, and Ernest says,
It's okay, we all make bad decisions.
yes, thank you, Jonah. But you know,
You talking to me?
Ernest doesn't hate on any manufacturer. They're all a little different. Everybody does things a little differently. So, but he's an SADA guy. He loves his Beretta.
Yeah.
Mr. Beretta, yeah. And I have a much fonder appreciation now for the gun, especially after we did a trigger job. One of the first things I did when I started here, did a trigger job on my own M9A3. World of difference in that gun.
Sure.
Oh my God, I shot it before, and I shot it like a week later, and I was like, oh, why was that not done from the factory? Like, I'm sure if Beretta could.
Well, we just talked about that next door. Yep.
So, but
Very cool.
The difference was amazing.
This is the personal 92G Langdon Tactical Technologies Beretta that the head gunsmith here at Langdon built for himself, and man, is it sweet. I'm not really a fan of Cerakoted guns per se. I like kind of like old school metal, but this thing's sweet. It's got a really cool green on it. The application of the Cerakote, flawless. There's not a spot or blemish on it. Smooth. He did the carry bevel on it, easing all the edges. And what else is cool about this is the way that he worked this action over. Oh my gosh, listen to this. Oh, wowzers. So when you see somebody that puts the time and effort into stuff like this, you know what's going out. It's there, man. Jonah the gunsmith.
Hi, I'm Jonah.
You heard what I was just saying to your coworker in the other room. You could have gone anywhere with your experience. You moved from the upper Midwest, not far from me in Minnesota, all the way down here to the desert to work on these guns. Yeah?
Yeah.
Why do you do it?
The weather.
The weather?
And plus Ernest is so much fun to work with. He's a wealth of knowledge, and truthfully I've learned more in the last year than I probably did on the Beretta going to school.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's probably, when you're this deep into it, that's probably an easy you know, an easy thing to have happen. If you could quantify like the ethos of the company, if you were at a trade show without your bosses and somebody's like, tell me about Langdon, what would you say?
Superior quality through superior product. You know, like our
Somebody
OP
tell
trigger
you
bar.
to say that?
No. Like our OP trigger bar, just the quality, you know, I'm pretty sure Ernest has talked about it with you already. Just the little bit different changes, you know, that we made to it, plus the finishes on it, just make it that much better. So, and you know, it costs a little bit more, but that little bit extra work that we put into it makes it worth it.
Chances are, if a gun leaves here, you touched it.
Yep, either Ernest or I touched it.
You want to touch my gun? Huh?
Is this one yours?
You want to touch my gun? I'm just being a little bit more nefarious, but...
Well, I'm touching this one for you.
Thank you.
Langdon Tactical, this is Amy.
Hi, is this Langdon Tactical?
Yes, it is. Who's this?
This is Mickey.
Hey, Mickey.
How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
High five. Can I steal this chair?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've filmed some stuff downstairs. Now this is what those guys are staying quiet. They said be scared of her. What does that mean?
Well,
Look at, they're like not. They're
hiding.
all zipped up.
They're like,
What does that mean?
we're
Be scared of
good.
her.
I'm not sure. You should ask them. I hate all of you right now.
Nobody said that. Nobody said that.
My
That's
face
just,
is red.
so what do you do here? Of course, you're like the brains behind the operation, but what do you do? Like you got a nice big computer screen.
We do custom gun work on Berettas, 92s, PX4s, improving the double action, single action, and making that trigger pull smoother and lighter for you. Well, it's going to be the 11-pound hammer spring instead of a 16-pound hammer spring. The factory spring is equivalent to about a 16-pound hammer spring. On a day-to-day basis, what happens around here is there's 3 of us that answer the phone.
Okay.
So if you call in, one of 3 of us are going to answer. Either 2 of us here, Bill out in Dallas.
Oh my God, we're on the phone with a real customer call.
Langdon Tactical, this is Amy. We help you out. We'll place orders, troubleshoot, counsel people through their gun problems.
Yeah, I noticed just like we were having lunch up here and at your meeting table there while you were working through lunch, and you seem to be a lot of the same questions over and over. People are calling and they don't know what they need or what they want, and you're having to educate them. Is that?
That's pretty constant.
Yeah.
So they're the same height sight, 290 battle sight with the Ameriglow Pro Glow. And then if you're gonna put a Spartan sight front on there.
You have a website. Does that website answer a lot of these questions?
It does.
So
The 11-pound hammer spring. Can you hang on one second? You gotta understand it. I think the big thing for customers calling in is they wanna know that you understand it. Or if you don't, that you just say you don't. You can do the whole Spartan sight set too, but if you want the black rear, then you would have to do it in the back. Can you hang on one second? The honesty and communication. I think the 2 biggest things being a business owner is communicate and understand. And if you don't, disclose that you don't know. And if you can get the answer, get them the answer. If you can't, you can't. It's easier for me to answer the questions on the phone. I hate going back and forth on email.
okay, yeah,
Constantly.
me too. That's what I'm saying.
But a lot of people call in and they want to know what Ernest does, what he prefers, how he builds it out.
How tall he is, how much he weighs, what size shoes he wears.
Does he like long walks on the beach?
Exactly.
Yep. He doesn't.
He doesn't? You don't like long walks
sand
on the
gets
beach?
between his toes. He doesn't like it. That's the silicone recoil spring. You want the hammer spring. He does like red wine. Yep. Red blend for anybody that's wanting to send us some. But no, a lot of people do call in and they just kind of want you to talk it through, or they have some questions and they want some clarification.
It's a big purchase for if you're buying one of your builds. It's not like somebody's just buying like a holster or something that's $50 or $100.
And sometimes they just want you to tell them what to do or drive it against a competitive
You're
product.
good at that. Here's what you're going to do. Give me your credit card number. Let's get this done. I've got other people to
If they
help.
know what they want, yeah. A lot of times you can answer the questions, but we don't. I'm sorry, thank you for holding. How can I help you?
Literally every time I try to record something,
It varies. I mean, some people just don't even have an email address, and they want you to send them your catalog. Well, we don't have a catalog.
We don't have a catalog because it's 2020.
Right.
Yeah.
But then a lot of people just have questions and they just want to talk it through, or they just want you to do it. They want to know that a human is actually processing the order and functioning and going through. The funny thing is when they think that Ernest is the only one building the gun still, that one cracks us up. Or when they email us and they think that Ernest is the one responding. Because there's 4 of us on this email, I think.
Oh, okay. So
it's,
you can't do as much as you're doing and it just be Ernest or you or
correct.
One of those gents. Yeah, for
Correct.
sure.
No, the D model hammer spring is different. If you're in the search bar, type in hammer spring 11. The big 2 things after having met Ernest and then
Married him and
getting involved in all of this is knowing and understanding the 92 and the M9 platform. I didn't understand the history behind all of it when we started. I had no idea. And then as a new shooter myself, 5 years ago, having not shot, having been terrified of guns just because I wasn't exposed to it, understanding the DASA mentality. So really positioning around the DASA versus the striker. And for me personally, as a mom, at the time as a very new mom, the safety and reliability behind it, of also knowing that my 2-year-old and my 3-year-old couldn't actually get his hands on the gun, right? Not that you'd ever have it in reach of a kid. Responsible gun handling, right? There's layers to that.
What I'm hearing, just so people don't misunderstand what you're saying, you like the inherent extra layer of safety of a double action trigger.
Bingo. Yep. So just that added pull, and even talking to people on the phone constantly and hearing them talk about their 1911s or their Glocks and their reliability, or the way things are not necessarily functioning the way they want it to, and they want this elite. You can find us on the web at langdontactical.com or on Instagram at Langdon Tactical.
Are you anywhere else on the web? You guys got a
We're on
YouTube
Facebook,
channel? Okay.
Langdon Tactical, and then the YouTube is Langdon Tactical or Ernest Langdon.
Perfect. And you are Ernest's wife, right?
Yes, Ernest's wife.
You missed all those jokes
Yes.
earlier.
Have your freaking ticket there?
Look at the phone. Just popping pictures right now.
Oh, is it?
Well, hey guys, that was just a brief kind of a fun look at the behind the scenes of a company like this. You got to meet some of the guys and gals behind what they do here. Hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in, go straight to them, Langdon Tactical Technologies on the interwebs. You could also go through the link on CarryTrainer.com. Support good companies, support good people. Be good.